Hey everybody, it's Ashley. This is a short PowerPoint that I just wanted to clarify a few pieces on. Hope you're all hanging in there. And the first thing I wanted to talk about is the scavenger hunt. I have had a couple of folks email me with questions or be concerned over different pieces, but the big thing I want you all to take away from this assignment is that it is not about finding right or wrong information so much as I want you all to experience the process of trying to figure out where to go and who does what. The early childhood system in North Carolina is scattered at best, I'll say that. So there's a lot of different agencies, there's a lot of different components, and it's confusing sometimes, and I'm sure you're finding out you can call or contact one person and they may send you somewhere else or not have the answers. So I don't want you to overthink this assignment. If there's a certain point that you get to and you hit a dead end, tell me about why you hit the dead end. If you can't come up with a complete explanation or reasoning behind one of the questions or who to contact for something, don't be afraid that there's not an answer in that spot, but instead I want you to tell me about how you got to where you did get to. So let's say, for example, I don't know, you called Rated License with asking questions about the assessment process, and they send you back to your consultant. Well, then your consultant sends you back to Rated License. So my point here is, if you end up feeling like you didn't have an exact answer, don't freak out. That's not the end of the world. I just want everyone to experience what it's like to really try to get information. The other piece of this is just getting a basic feel for the system that we have right now and the different agencies that interact, what some of them do, what some of them don't do, and also to have an idea of where to go to find info. And hopefully in this process, if you come across someone that is super helpful, get their contact info. You're going to want to talk to them again, because if they know who to go to with an answer to a question, you know you can rely on them in the future. That doesn't always happen. So I guess the basic point of this is, don't stress the rightness, the wrongness, the making this be exact. This is more about the process and also how to apply some of the rules and regulations that exist. Now, I'm sure you're finding out too, and I'm going to include a link under this at the end or on the Moodle page about just licensing in general nationwide. But every state does have a different process. There are some states that do not have licensure, and you just need to register in your state, and then there's some that are very stringent and have multiple tools and processes and steps to go through. Now with ours, we do have a tool right now associated with our quality rating improvement system, and ours obviously are the rating scales. And I want to clarify, we've gotten to a point where in our state it's often seen as a test, or we have folks that are supposed to be coming in to help us think about quality when they're really giving us a checklist of different materials and how things should look based on the assessment scales. That is not what they were created for in the first place. Originally, they're designed to be a lens through which to view the program. With that being said, programs should all look differently. One family child care home whose values are defined in one way should look completely different from another family child care home. And I think over time it has turned into teaching to the test, or performing a certain way, or having certain materials and structure to your day so that you meet the requirements of the tool. And I want you to think about those more through the lens of, what is quality defined by you? What do you believe to be quality? And that as you're going through this, the understanding that our state laws, rules, regulations are minimums. The minimums aren't somewhere to set the bar and say, this is what I want to achieve, and that's it. Now I'm happy and I'm going to sit here. But think of them as a minimum. And once you reach that minimum, you still have choices and other things that you can do in your program. I've jumped around a bit, but going back to the quality rating improvement system, originally began just as a license and then moved into the AA system. And in 1999, moved closer to what we know now, which is that star rated licensure. And that is where the assessment piece comes into play. I do believe we're at a place in time where the stars don't tell you a whole lot. There are centers I work with that are licensed at 5 stars and have practices in place that I would not be comfortable leaving my child. There are family child care home providers I work with who choose not to participate that may have 2 stars, and I would leave my daughter there in a heartbeat. So I want you to think more critically about what that means and what are the next steps as to where we could go next to start defining quality. But in the meantime, working with the system that we have. We're also in a place where we realize this in the system, and they are doing some pilot studies that are looking at some new measures. Do not go jumping the gun thinking that I said anything remotely resembling we have a new system that will be coming. I did not say that. There are some tools and different things that are being looked at just to see how valid and reliable is this in measuring quality, because quality is really hard to capture. There are some pieces that are tangible. There are some things you could walk in and say, yes, I see this happening, but there's a lot more that's subjective. And to me, that's around the language, the social emotional piece is what's happening working for the children that are in that environment. So I put together this chart, and this is by no means going to explain all the ways that everyone interacts or what agencies exist and how they're interrelated. But the basic thing I want you to wrap your head around is that our North Carolina government has departments. So basically, the Department of Health and Human Services has many divisions within it. The 2 main ones I want us to know who they are is the DCDEE, or Division of Child Development and Early Learning. This is who your consultant directly works for. They handle licensing, monitoring, even more than that. But for the purposes of this, understand that they are the licensing agency. Parallel to that is the Division of Public Health. And within all of that, we go all the way down through different subsystems to get to children's environmental health. And this is where your sanitation inspection comes into play. So the folks that come to see if your kitchen meets the guidelines for being able to serve raw meat, to participate in a food program, sanitation is all handled under that umbrella. Now, further down, I have some arrows because to me, I wanted to indicate some funding streams, but this is where it gets tricky because funding exists in our early childhood system, not in direct lines. And some money sometimes goes one way and another way, and then money is braided and woven and streamed. So I don't want you to be too concerned with understanding direct funding sources so much as within the division, one of the things that they fund has a lot to do with the Rated License Assessment Project. And this is who you are going to call if you want to participate in the Star Rated License. They're going to be the folks that schedule the assessment, come out and do the assessment. I will say also, though, that they have some fabulous resources on their website if you have questions about the tools also, and they do provide trainings in certain areas around the assessment tools. Your NC Pre-K is also another stream that comes out of the division. I'm going to go back to that one in just a second, so let's go back up to the top. The other two major pieces I want you to know about are your childcare resource and referrals and partnerships. Now, in our state, sometimes these exist in one location. They work together, they are housed in the same building, and they do things together. But then in other situations, there may be a regional resource and referral, but then county partnerships underneath or within that system, I should say. They do interact, but that could look very different depending on which specific one in our state you are talking about. Now, underneath, I'll backtrack for a second. The two big things to get out of this too is that your resource and referrals deal a lot with the mandatory trainings. So offering the BSAC, SIDS, CPR, consumer education around linking families looking for childcare with childcare providers. And they also fund some other supports too, infant toddler specialists, healthy social behavior or guiding healthy behaviors. And then you've also got your partnerships, which typically are county level. They also fund projects to help you, providers of early childhood education, but they also fund projects that direct serve families and young children. Typically, your pre-K classrooms that are housed in childcare centers are going to fall underneath that partnership umbrella when it comes to monitoring and funding, although the division does have some funding into that as well. So basically, what I want you to understand is if you choose to participate in the STAR-rated licensing system, you will be involved with the rating scales, your ITERs, ECHRs, FICRs. They were originally designed around research and what we know to be good for children. And the tools are meant to be a lens through which to view your program, not tools to use to make your program meet the tool requirements. What I urge you all to do is read the one that applies to you. Go through it. Highlight something if it aligns with what you value. Highlight something if you don't understand it, and find out the why instead of just saying this is crazy or why would I need to do this and throwing it out the window. I'm going to go to the good old standby much of the day. If you're not familiar with this yet in the rating scales, it's a term that has to do with how long children have access to something. It could be play, it could be materials, whatever. But there's often a lot of confusion around the why behind it. And oftentimes when you are in the temp licensing time frame, your consultant will either contact an agency to get in touch with you or give you the information for some agency or person that can come in and support you to go through the assessment process, and they are called technical assistants. So when you hear folks refer to TA or technical assistants, it is support around the assessment process. And what I encourage you to do is to understand the why rather than just having someone that wants to, this won't always happen, but I have seen it happen, come in, take a look around, maybe look at the schedule that's posted on the wall and say, well, if you just change this time to this, then you're going to meet the requirements for this indicator within a tool. No. I want you to know the why, and I also want you to believe in it. The much of the day piece that I started talking about, the whole reason that that's even in the rating scales is because someone actually did research on young children's brains and realized it actually takes 45 minutes or something before their brains engaged in what they were doing. Synapses started firing and connecting, and we know that it takes a certain amount of time for that to happen. That's why that's actually in there. So don't let it be a test. And don't let someone else's approach to the process influence what you believe in. We've gotten to a place sometimes where I feel like we are adapting our programs to meet indicators. And it's more about looking at why these indicators were important in the first place, and is it something that you agree with and value? At the same token, why even participate? Well, if you plan to have children in your program who are on vouchers or subsidy dollars, the reimbursement rates are directly tied to the star rating of the program. Some people associate it with a public image. There are families and parents who think that a 5-star program means great things and that a 1 or 2-star program means bad things. And I know from working in the field that is not always true. There are programs with 5 stars that I would not be in myself, much less leave my child. And I have worked with providers in 1 and 2-star places that I would happily be comfortable enrolling my child in. But there is a public image that's associated with your star level. And it's also required for some programs or grants to be eligible to even participate. So if you're in a center and you would like to apply to have an NC pre-K classroom, in order to even be eligible to apply, you must have a 4 or 5-star license. There's certain grants and things too that you may be eligible for through partnerships or your resource and referrals that require certain star rated licenses. But in the end, I want you all to ask yourself, why does it matter to you? And last but not least, if you don't participate in a system, you have no influence in changing it. So if there's something in it that you don't agree with, it's a whole lot harder to have some clout or participate in a system if you aren't, or change a system if you aren't actively involved in the system. So think about all of those things before approaching the assessment process. I've heard some folks in comments or assignments, things that have been turned in, emails related to how they already feel about the process. And I want you to think critically about it and why was it designed in the first place, and try to get us back to our roots and why we had it from day one, because it has turned into something that's a little bit different from what it was originally intended to be. So what I wanted to achieve with this is just that basic understanding. I kind of went over those pieces, the major agencies and that initial process, and the general idea of who to contact with questions, and always asking why, even if it's just yourself. So if you come across a rule or regulation that sounds crazy, what impact does it have on staff, and what impact does it have on the children? And a lot of times I think you'll come up with your answer on your own. We tend to get so bogged down in the day-to-day stuff and the work, and there's just not enough time, that sometimes it feels like the rules and regulations are just another piece that doesn't always make sense. But I've found if we ask, what does it do to the staff and what is this doing to the children, will help you kind of figure out, oh, well, this does make sense. And last but not least, to slow down, y'all. Don't worry. I have a lot of folks who seem to be reaching out, and some stress that I can feel. But I'll say again, the only reason anybody won't do well in this course is if there's something you don't understand or something happens and you don't communicate, or if you just don't try. This is not about right, wrong, it has to be this answer and that's the only way you get credit, so much as it's a process, and trust the process. So the last thing I want to talk about again is the next big assignment. It will feel big when you see it, but it's not. Don't stress. Again, it's not about a perfect product so much as the process that you're going to and critical thinking. So before you go into the content around policies and procedures, take notes. And when you come across a law meaning something you could get in trouble for doing, if it's something that has to be communicated to your staff, make a note. because that's a great topic right there that will become a policy in your staff handbook, manual, whatever you end up choosing to call that. And don't overthink the interview process portion of the assignment. The point again is just to think about how to get the right fit sooner than later. Asking some of the right questions, but at the same time staying in your lane legally, because there are things ethically and legally that we can and cannot ask, and we need to be aware of that. But I encourage you all to think back on your values. That's the foundation of what you're doing. And when people have shared values, things will, I won't say fall into place, but come a lot closer. So think about how to check in on your values and figure that out in the interview process with potential hires. Last but not least, bear with me on the technology piece. I am working really hard to revamp the content that was here. Some of it is fabulous. Some of it is a little dated, but that's what happens. And I'm trying to get it all back up to speed. But in that, there are some links that sometimes I might not catch or a glitch. Feel free to shoot me an email and let me know, but bear with me. I promise I'm not doing things on purpose and making something not work just to trick you or give you a hard time. And to hang in there. Everybody so far is fabulous and on track. I love reading the responses, and I wish we had face-to-face time, but I'm trying to make the most out of what we have without getting all of the face-to-face time to get to know everybody. So again, I hope the content for this week is not too heavy. I know it's a lot to wrap your head around. Hang in there and email me if you've got questions. I'll see y'all next time.